But now we have to find out if he was serious. And so far, it's not a promising start.
Not a promising start. Mark Carney, Prime Minister Mark Carney, is ruling by decree. When we come back, what do I mean by that? I think most of you already know.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Thanks for joining me an hour earlier today. This is David Krayden, live from Ottawa. It just seemed like a good time to start today, and thanks for keeping up with me. Lots happening, although nothing is happening at the House of Commons. We're still waiting. It's the 15th. We're 11 days away from Parliament resuming. What are the Liberals doing? Plotting to take control of your life. Now, what is the first duty of a government? Well, I would say to keep you safe and secure, not to give you welfare, not to bring in mass immigration. But another duty is to bring in a budget. That should be the first thing the finance minister, Champagne, should be doing. But we found out yesterday, no budget.
The Canadian government priority, and there will be a fall economic statement to follow. So those are really the sequence that you're going to see. Tax cut for the middle class, we're going to be introducing a Ways and Means motions as we enter back into Parliament. We'll table legislation. Then there'll be a throne speech, and then we'll present a fall economic statement.
No budget. No budget. Are you going to work with opposition parties to get this passed? How are you going to get the votes to get this passed? Are you going to reach out to opposition parties and see if they'll?
Well, Canadians sent a very clear message that they want this Parliament to work for them, and the first measure that we're introducing is a middle class tax cut. So we expect other parliamentarians to support, obviously, the government, because this is about Canadians. We are in a situation, in the dire situation. We've been talking with Canadians for weeks and months during the campaign. They told us one thing: they want us to do bold things. They want us to do them quickly, and they want us to do things for them. So this is a way for all parliamentarians to show up and say, yes, we support Canadians at a time where they need a break. And this is the best way to.
Now, why do you suppose they don't want to introduce a budget? Because they don't want a non-confidence motion, which is, of course, the vote on the budget would be, until they have a majority government or they have enough MPs in their pocket. This is what's happening. This is called ruling by decree. And as I said yesterday, Mark Carney likes to talk like Pierre Poilievre. He likes to use conservative language, but it means exactly the opposite. Now, here's the new industry minister, Melanie Joly. Yes, attractive as ever, but I don't know if she's up to the job. Here she is, suddenly jumping on the let's forget about the auto sector now. That was apparently a huge deal during the election campaign. But now, let's forget about it.
Contingency plans. The Prime Minister says we always have to plan for the worst. If the auto plans move south, can they be retooled? Can you redevelop the auto plans?
So I've already been in contact with the CEOs of GM, Ford, and also Stellantis. My goal is to be able to have good conversations with them before the end of the week. My message to the workers in the auto sector is we're there for you. We know that there's anxiety. We know you're concerned about losing shifts. We know we were concerned about losing your jobs, and we will always fight for your jobs. Notwithstanding that, we also have a $2 billion worth of support for the industry, the auto industry, the steel and aluminum industries that are affected by the trade war. One of my first decisions will be also to make sure that the workers can benefit from these investments. Merci. Merci.
Meaning what? They're going to bail out the auto industry and the steel industry. So this is what the Liberals love to have, is a crisis. They love to have a crisis because that enables them to spend money and to create dependency amongst Canadians. They want Canadians to be dependent upon the government. And you remember this yesterday. I'm going to play this clip again because this is when Mark Carney was asked about whether or not he's going to repeal Bill C-69. He sort of left it open, but he couldn't answer the question. He couldn't say yes or no. But let's listen to this again.
What people in Alberta and Saskatchewan who didn't vote for your party are worried about, right? They are worried that it is the Mark Carney of values. It is the Justin Trudeau government. And the reason I ask about that is against that backdrop, right? You are still saying you're going to keep C-69 in place. You are going to keep the emissions cap in place. They view that as evidence of something. They view that, pardon me, as evidence of something that runs counter to what you're saying right now.
What I've said very clear. Look, I am a pragmatist. I go over and over on this, and I really am. I'm interested in results. So the point of building a pipeline, the point of building out carbon capture is to get the results, to get those barrels to the market, to get carbon down. You can do both. We have the capability to do more, and we have the capabilities financially, from a technological perspective, in terms of the companies. Federal government can play a role. The Alberta, province of Alberta, obviously other provinces, Indigenous people have to come along for almost all of these projects in order for them to actually work.
All right, so is he repealing C-69, the anti-pipeline bill? He won't say, but he kind of left the door open a crack. Why is Stephen Guilbeault still in this cabinet? This is a man who he's criminal. He was arrested and charged for climbing the CN Tower as a stunt for Greenpeace. He is an environmental extremist wearing a suit. I consider the man a complete whack job. He doesn't have any inkling of how the economy works in this country, that we are very reliant on natural resource-based economy. We're very reliant on oil and gas. It's a huge percentage of the Canadian economy. Without that, we are going to be bankrupt. Now, Stephen Guilbeault doesn't care or understand. He doesn't even care that he doesn't understand that. But here he is, once again, speaking for the environmental extreme wing of the Liberal Party, which, yes, Mark Carney represents. That's where he's been his whole life. Read his book, Values. Say it again. His political heroes are Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin. That makes him a Marxist-Leninist. But let's hear what Stephen Guilbeault has to say about Liberal policy. Maybe Stephen Guilbeault understands more about it than Mark Carney is telling us.
She's still concerned that you're part of cabinet, and also the new selection of Mr. Buzyn for the environment minister. She says it's too close of a tie to you. What do you say in response to that?
I think we will have to agree to disagree with Premier Smith. We think that protecting the environment, fighting climate change is important. Lots of Canadians believe that as well. It was a central element of our platform, and we will make good on our commitments.
The Prime Minister last night on TV seemed to open the door to potentially changing the emissions cap or the IAA to get projects built. What do you think of what he said?
Well, these are important conversations that we will need to have in the coming weeks.
Premier Smith is saying that you're anti-pipeline still. What do you say in response to her concerns just broadly about the cabinet, and how do you deal with national unity? How do you address that right now?
So on pipelines, people should remember that we bought a pipeline, Trans Mountain, and that is only used right now about 40% capacity. So I think before we start talking about building an entire new pipeline, maybe we should maximize the use of existing infrastructure. And the Canadian Energy Regulator, as well as the International Energy Agency, are telling us that probably by 2028, 2029, demand for oil will peak globally, and it will also peak in Canada. So as far as I know, there are no investors right now. There are no companies that are saying that they want to build an east-west pipeline. And as you know, these things are built by companies, not governments.
Are you against the construction of pipelines in Canada? What I'm saying is that we already have an infrastructure in place that's not even at 50% capacity. So before we think about building new infrastructure, we should maximize the use of what already exists. And as I said to your colleague, the Canadian Energy Agency and the International Energy Agency. Yes, but the Prime Minister is saying, well, let's build pipelines, and you're pushing the brake on that. Well, what I'm saying is that the international and Canadian energy agencies are saying that demand for oil will peak by 2028, 2029, and there's no developer who's interested in building an east-west pipeline at this time.
Fire this bastard. This guy is an idiot. Why is there not more demand? Because of the net zero policies of the Trudeau government. Take away these net zero policies. Allow Alberta to produce more oil and gas, and there'll be people, there'll be companies, there'll be corporations who want to build the pipelines immediately. But this idiot doesn't get that. He doesn't even want to try to understand that. But of course, there's a demand for more pipelines. But this guy, once again, is freelancing. Is he the voice of the Liberal Party? Is he the voice of the Carney government? Guilbeault was the same guy who said we're not going to build any more roads in Canada because that means we're going to have cars to drive on them. Well, we don't want to have cars to drive. We're going to ban automobiles. So we won't build any more roads. He never really explained that one, did he? He got up in the House of Commons and said, I'm a proud socialist. This guy, if Mark Carney is serious at all about being a prime minister for all of Canada, fire this idiot. Get him out of the cabinet. Because clearly he is pushing a radical environmental agenda. Continues to push a radical environmental agenda. And he doesn't take Alberta independence seriously. He doesn't think it's even a remote possibility. Can't happen. Just can't happen. Why? Because Stephen Guilbeault says so. Well, let me tell you, based on what I have heard coming from Alberta, and the fact that a new poll reveals that 51% of Albertans want to vote on whether Alberta should separate or not. The numbers keep getting higher. And the more people like Stephen Guilbeault open their big, stupid mouths, the higher the number will go in Alberta for separation. Because they're not buying this. They're not buying this Liberal government that's repentant about destroying the Canadian and Albertan economies. They're not buying this new look exemplified by Mark Carney, that we're not really as radical as we used to be. We're not like the Trudeau government. We've changed. No, they haven't. They've still got the same players. They still got Champagne as finance minister. Do you want to really hear a budget read by that whining voice? Chrystia Freeland's still in the cabinet. Maybe it's not a significant position, but she's still there. And a housing minister? Oh, like Gregor Robertson, an incompetent mayor from Vancouver, a socialist, so far left, he's off the spectrum. Here's what Alberta says. You've heard Jeff Rath on this station, on this show. He'll be back again. But this is where Alberta stands on this issue. And it's because of people like Stephen Guilbeault still being in the federal cabinet.
Vote yes to that question. Do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? What you're really doing is voting yourself depending on your tax bracket, between a 30 to 50% pay raise. And I want people to focus, and I think Dennis Modry, speaks to this, is voting yourself, depending on your tax bracket, between a 30 to 50% pay raise.
Now, why is that? Because because Albertans would no longer be subject to federal income tax or Canadian income tax, which takes a huge bite out of your salary. You say, well, how can Alberta afford that? Because Alberta is giving back more to the Canadian economy than it takes. Alberta is forced to spend $13 billion in equalization payments every year. Alberta doesn't need two taxes. Provincial tax would be sufficient. So suddenly you're left with all of that money in your pocket, as Jeff Rath explains.
And I want people to focus, and I think Dennis Modry, speaks to this, is if you look at the average salary of the average Albertan, which, they pegged at $78,000 a year, if you take all of the federal taxes, the cost of all of the federal regulations, all of the costs that are piled on the average working man or woman in this province, the average person's actual spending power from that $78,000 is probably closer to $31,000 to $35,000. It's ridiculous what they're doing to us. They are intentionally keeping us in poverty. They are intentionally making people's lives miserable because, of course, to quote Klaus Schwab and David Lametti, you will own nothing and be happy. Right? This is what they're trying. This is literally what they're trying to do to us. But in a new Alberta tax, in a new Alberta tax regime where we have a 10% flat tax on income, a 10% flat tax, on corporations, a doubling of our oil and gas output so that the entire economy in this province is thriving, we could easily afford those tax levels, and the average take-home pay of the person making $78,000 a year would increase from $31,000 to $35,000 to $65,000 to $70,000. Think about that. So when you vote yes to that question, do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? What you're really doing is voting yourself, depending on your tax bracket, between a 30 to 50% pay raise. And my question for everybody is, in the context of, remember that show, this shows me how old I am now, but there was a show when I was a kid called The Courtship of Eddie's Father, right? So, let's call it The Courtship of Danielle Smith, with Mark Carney coming to Alberta with his little boxes of chocolates and making sweet little offers to her about, oh, I could make your life really better. I can't give you any pipelines, but I'll make vague promises as to energy mega projects that don't burn fossil fuels. Maybe I'll give you a couple million or a couple billion of your own dollars back to build hydrogen plants like the ones they have in Newfoundland, or whatever other stupid things Carney thinks he can bring to the table to entice Danielle Smith into selling out her own citizens, right? But on a going forward basis, what everybody has to understand, there isn't a goddamn thing, excuse my language, there is not a thing that Mark Carney can offer Alberta that is more valuable than a complete end to all federal regulation and all federal taxation in the province of Alberta.
Pretty enticing, isn't it? And by the way, there's YouTubers out there who I think just take up a lot of space, who are questioning why Jeff Rath is a spokesman at all for Alberta independence. I'll tell you why. Because he knows his material. He's eloquent. He's educated. He's the chief legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project. And the guy knows his stuff. And if you think he's not exhibiting the right qualities of an Albertan because he wears a Stetson, have your head examined because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I'm not going to mention any names, but he knows who he is. So that's the question in front of Albertans right now. You can save a whole lot of money, or you can play Mark Carney's game. And that's exactly what Mark Carney wants you to do. Now, I'm going to play, this is an extended clip. This is Pierre Poilievre's response to the new cabinet. I feel for Pierre. He's going into a minefield in this by-election. It's going to be difficult because he's a federalist going into a province that is increasingly embracing the idea of independence. So it's going to be a difficult by-election, even though it's a safe seat. Conservatives have been winning that seat with 60 to 70% of the vote for decades. It's one of the safest seats in the country. So I'm not saying he's going to win, but it's going to be a difficult campaign for him. And let's listen to what he says here. And he's not even the leader of the official opposition right now. He's the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. So this is a hard road that Pierre Poilievre is going down right now.
So I'd like to begin today in English by congratulating the new ministers for their roles. It's literally a 1 in a million opportunity. I think they have 40 ministers in total, and there's about 41 million people, so it's literally 1 in a million.
I'm glad he pointed this out because, Mark Carney's saying we've only got 28 cabinet ministers. Well, yeah, plus another 10 secretaries of state. They're just little lower tier. They're getting paid a little less money than a full cabinet minister. But don't give me this BS that you cut the cabinet to the bare bone.
Be a minister, and a big accomplishment to get to that place. The Conservatives will take our role of holding the government accountable seriously. That doesn't mean we reflexively oppose everything the government does. When it comes, for example, to foreign affairs, if the government does a good job at defending our national interests in negotiations with the U.S., then we will support those efforts.
And probably continue to support the idiocy in Ukraine. And even though the war cannot last much longer and Ukraine is defeated, but the Liberals and the Conservatives will continue to advocate to spend billions of dollars of money we don't have and take away from our own national defense, which has become a joke. And I want to say that right now, because a lot of people are saying, well, how can Alberta possibly have a national defense? How can it have an armed forces? Any place in the world can replicate what Canada has left of an armed forces. We've got less than 15,000 personnel who can be used as frontline soldiers. We can't fly half of our aircraft. We can't sail half of our ships. We have no tanks left. Our military has become a joke. And I mean, and look at the woke military personnel, men with nail polish, ponytails. This is not a military anymore. It's a play school.
And when they're right, we'll stand with them. When they're wrong, we will oppose them. We hope the country succeeds. We want the nation to do well. We ran on the promise of bringing home Canada's promise. A very simple deal that Canada used to provide, which is that anyone who works hard gets a great life in an affordable home on a safe street under our proud flag. And that means boosting the buying power of our workers and seniors by cutting wasteful spending and bureaucracy to bring down taxes and inflation. It means freeing workers and businesses to build more affordable homes and develop resources.
Cut the civil service. Don't wait for attrition. Cut it. It's a bloated civil service, and we don't need all of these people, or these tax collectors for that matter, sucking up government money, sucking up taxpayer funds. Cut them. Let's get serious about that. Let's get on with a Department of Government Efficiency. I challenge the Carney government to do that. And I challenge Pierre Poilievre to embrace that idea.
It means unleashing investment by cutting and simplifying taxes. It means protecting our streets with stronger laws and borders. Canadians cannot afford more high-spending, high-taxing, over-regulating, out-of-touch Liberal policies that have priced young people out of homes, inflicted crime waves on our communities, driven 2 million people to the food bank, and made life unbearable for too many hardworking and decent people. In his first press conference, Mr. Carney talked a good game about reversing Liberal policies in these areas, but now we have to find out if he was serious. And so far, it's not a
Pierre, he talked a good game. It's all talk. He's stealing your vocabulary. He's stealing your buzzwords, and he doesn't believe in what you believe those buzzwords and those words mean. He's simply stealing them and pretend. He's a let's pretend conservative.
promising start. The first disappointment is, unfortunately, his cabinet. He appointed Trudeau's old team and Trudeau's old advisors. Stephen Guilbeault, whose radical green agenda would shut down all future developments in our resource industry, is still the minister responsible for Quebec. Sean Fraser was the immigration minister who caused the immigration crisis, the housing minister who gave us the housing crisis, and now he's the minister responsible for addressing the Liberal crime crisis.
That's a very good point. Sean Fraser, one of the most incompetent members of the Trudeau cabinet, keeps getting promoted. Now he's the justice minister. This is a very good point. Sean Fraser, once again, is emblematic of the failed Trudeau government.
It seems like he is the master at failing upward. Chrystia Freeland, who as finance minister hiked capital gains tax and carbon taxes and massively grew our debt to the point where we now spend $1 billion a week on interest, stays in the cabinet. Then there's Gary Anadesangari, the new Minister of Public Safety, who said the actual crimes, the actual issues around bail are quite sound, and they are embedded in, codified in law right now, as in to say that there's nothing wrong with the system. Well, in fact, there's everything wrong, as we see from the growing crime wave on our streets. Then there's François-Philippe Champagne, Trudeau's Minister of Everything, who never really managed to do anything. And he did it very loudly. But nice guy. I'll give him credit. He's a nice guy. But
I disagree. He's not a nice guy. He was a whining nuisance every day in question period. Not a nice guy. And it's painful to listen to Champagne talk. But this is the guy now who's finance minister. God help this country.
He was the Minister of Industry, during which we had the worst economic growth of any country in the G7. And now he's in charge of the budget. Then there's Joly, LeBlanc, Haidu, Anand. Anand was the president of the Treasury Board, during which time the bureaucracy and the consultant bills blew out of control. In all, 14 Trudeau ministers are now in Carney's cabinet. It's more of the same when Canada needs real change. Even the new additions are problematic. Gregor Robertson was the mayor of Vancouver, who pushed for total legalization of hard drugs, distribution of tax-funded opioids. During his time there was a 600% increase in overdoses. Now he's the housing minister. Well, what's his record on housing? Well, he increased housing taxes in Vancouver by 141%, and the result was that housing costs went up by 149%, more than doubling the cost and giving Vancouver, his city, the most expensive housing prices in all of North America. Now
what on earth prompted Carney to put this guy in charge of housing when his record is that abysmal? You heard it, 149% increase in the price of houses. That's more than double the price of a house in Vancouver. I used to live in British Columbia, and I never lived in Vancouver per se. I lived in Vancouver Island, but housing even in those days was pretty expensive. I used to dream about buying a house in White Rock. It's impossible now. absolutely impossible because of idiot mayors like Gregor Robertson. And as well, what do? You can't buy a home, but we'll give you free drugs. Is there a correlation here? Yes. It's called the opiate of the masses. It's a literal opiate of the masses. Karl Marx used to talk about religion as being the opiate of the masses. Socialists and liberals literally give you opiates. So you won't complain about the fact you're on the street. You won't complain about the fact you can't afford a decent apartment. You won't complain about the fact that you can't afford a mortgage. They give you free drugs instead. And I think I'm going to send that talking point to Pierre Poilievre, because that's literally what these liberals have done. They've taken away our safe streets. They've taken away affordable housing. They've taken away our lifestyle. They've taken away what it means to be a citizen of Canada. But you can always get your free drugs. And you can stay stoned, so you won't notice and you won't care about how bad you have it economically. That's the Liberal plan.
Mr. Carney puts this gentleman in charge of housing. If this is the new blood that Mr. Carney is bringing into the cabinet, then sadly for Canadians, nothing is going to change, and the role of the Conservative Party will be more important than ever. Conservatives will continue to push real solutions. We'll put forward constructive ideas to reverse the housing crisis, make food affordable, and grow our paychecks. And these sorts of things cannot be solved with more bureaucracy and liberal laws. We need common sense results. And that's why Conservatives will continue to push for less spending, less taxes, less inflation, to lock up criminals, remove bureaucracy, speed up home building and resource production. We need to put forward real solutions on crime, for example, to toughen up penalties for repeat violent offenders and end the revolving door of broken bail. We will also demand the government actually impose a real cap on immigration so that we can stop the uncontrolled population growth that has put too much pressure on our housing, job, and healthcare systems.
Because, of course, the Liberals love the uncontrolled population growth, because that uncontrolled population is voting Liberal. I don't know how many times I've heard new immigrants are told to vote Liberal, because the Liberal brought you into this country. The Liberals will continue to pay. The Liberals will continue to subsidize your life. The Liberals will continue to give you taxpayer money. So yes, they are told to vote Liberal. And that's why the Liberals love the uncontrolled population growth.
Finally, and most importantly, the only way we get out of this deep economic trouble the Liberals have got us into is by unleashing economic growth. And that means repealing anti-development laws, C-69, the energy cap, the industrial carbon tax, the offshore shipping ban. All of these things need to be reversed so that we can unleash the incredible power of our resources. We need a pro-growth, free enterprise agenda to take us from the worst in the G7 to the best in the G7. We should be the richest country in the world with our resources and our brilliant.
And why aren't we the richest country in the world? Because the government has its hand in your pocket constantly. And Carney's talking about a middle-class tax cut of 1%. It adds up to nothing in the end. Because what the government will give you in one pocket, they'll take with the other hand out of your other pocket.
People, and Conservatives will continue to propose real solutions to make that happen. It's our constitutional duty to hold the government to account, and we will do that. We'll give a voice to all the voiceless, those who've been cast aside, ignored, kicked to the curb, the decent, honorable people whose lives have been turned upside down in the last decade, that feel like they've had, until recently, that they've had no voice. They've asked me to continue to fight for them, and Conservatives are going to be their voice on the floor of the House of Commons. We're proud that we brought together the biggest coalition of Conservatives in history that will all work. We want to make sure that every single person who vested their hopes in us sees us fighting for them every day, even though the final result did not go how we wanted. We want to see dramatic changes, not soft reassurances. We also have an offer to make the Liberals. my message to Mr. Carney, steal my ideas. We've got great ideas.
Well, he's stolen the language, Pierre. I don't know how many ideas he's stealing, but he's stolen the language. And freedom does not mean the same kind of freedom to Mark Carney as it means to a conservative, a small c conservative, or a small l libertarian. It doesn't mean the same thing at all. It means you're tethered to the government. That's what freedom means to a liberal.
And we've been leading the charge on the debate over carbon taxes, inflation, housing prices, crime, drugs, resource development. And I note the Liberals even lifted a few of those ideas and put them in their platform to get reelected. We want to make sure that they were sincere about that. And we're going to continue to put forward solid ideas to make people's lives better every day. Because our purpose is to bring home the promise of Canada, that everyone who works hard gets a great life, that anyone from anywhere can do anything, where you get a nice, affordable home on a safe street. Every day and in every way, we will fight for our people and our country to put people back in charge of their lives with bigger paychecks, abundant, affordable energy, home ownership, low taxes, safe streets, and a strong military in the country that we know and love, Canada. Thank you.
Now, when Mark Carney talks about safety and security, as I told you, he's not talking about the same thing. Pierre Poilievre literally does mean that you're secure from crime, from criminals, and you do live on a safe street. Mark Carney, safety is being under the boot of the government. That's what safety means to Mark Carney. We are headed towards a dictatorship. That's what the Carney government is all about. I say that unequivocally. We are headed towards a dictatorship and rule by decree. That's what Mark Carney is telling us. That's what his cabinet is telling us. And that's where Canada is headed. Now, I want to hear in your comments what you think about all of this, whether you think I'm full of it or whether you think Mark Carney is full of it. This program, this episode has been absolutely, they keep pushing the numbers down, absolutely suppressed. Because that's where we're headed, is continued government control of communications. Watch for the online harms bill to resurface as soon as Parliament comes back. I don't want to see it resurface, but watch for it. And you're going to hear more about disinformation and misinformation on the internet, especially on YouTube, especially on X. And it's going to be a clarion call for this government to wipe it out. We've got to fight back. We've got to resolve to resist. That's the slogan of this program, and that's what we have to continue to do, because we are facing a very dangerous government in Mark Carney. That's all I'm going to say today. Thank you for watching. I'll be back again at the usual time, 10 o'clock tomorrow. Godspeed to all of you. This has been David Krayden talking to you live from Ottawa.